Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Modernism Real Estate Podcast, where this is a nonchalant, comfortable conversation between two super cool realtors where we talk about today's market and real estate topics. We hope that you, as listeners and viewers, may learn a couple things from our conversation, and we hope that you enjoy. And don't forget to hit that follow,
subscribe, like,
yeah,
notification bell. You don't want to miss anything.
Dude,
We're posting.
I don't know why I can never get that part down every time.
It's the YouTuber lore.
Is that
Or you've got to know it. You got to know the pitch.
Yeah.
So hit that notification bell because every Monday, we're releasing a podcast. And we're going to be releasing videos throughout the week as well.
Yeah, and feel free to comment or, ask any questions because we will definitely be taking a look at those. And we'd love to, put those in these podcasts and in these videos where we can answer your guys' questions or topics that you guys want us to dive more into. Okay, so in today's podcast, we kind of wanted to talk about the difference between buying in 2023 and 2022. We realized that in those two different times, you have a very different market. A lot has changed. In 2022, it was the end of COVID, pretty much. Rates were insanely good at that point, which was like 2%, I think. The lowest that you can get was like 2%, which is pretty crazy for a home.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of jumbo loans, for instance, that were even better rates because those just track little bit better. But yeah, I think around 3% was maybe the
baseline. Well,
baseline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And right now, as of 2023, it's doubled. It was actually a little higher a couple months ago where it was like 7-8%. Now it's around that 6% now. Yeah. Which is better than the 7-8%. But definitely, I'll take the 6 over 7-8 for sure.
And one disclaimer, we're filming these podcasts every week and we're up to date, but also, rates change daily. They change with the markets, the bond prices, it's a securitized, it's a securities market. So they change every day. But essentially, we can talk about the big differences between, okay, what did it look like in 2022? We've experienced this. Versus what is it looking like now and how is it different? How is it, in my perspective, better for home buyers and better for home sellers at the same time, just because things aren't as stretched for timing.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
Not such a glut to get into a house that like all the procedures are waived. There's a little bit more thinking time. Yeah, and which is usual. It's traditional.
So I guess we'll start with that to elaborate in the difference between 2023 and 2022.
Okay.
So during 2022, like in the beginning of the year, it was so competitive. Like people were buying homes by overbidding, throwing out all their contingencies out the window. They did not care if the home was breaking down or like if there was any hidden defects. We'll take it. They bought it, like they just bought it as it is, essentially. And I think that's one of the biggest differences today in today's market, essentially. You as a buyer obviously have more leverage, more time. Not too much, but you definitely have a lot more time than before. And you're not competing with other buyers. I think those are like probably one of the biggest changes in today's market than it was last year. Do you want to elaborate on some of those things?
Yeah. Okay, I want to totally describe it to like a real estate newbie. I mean, what are interest rates? What does it matter? Well, in the U.S., we have the Federal Reserve, which is a national bank, not the U.S. government, but basically runs all of our monetary supply. So their job is to keep inflation in check. When there's a lot of spending by the government and not a lot of things being produced during COVID, they dropped rates like artificially low to try to stamp out like any form of recession at that point. they wanted to say, okay, we're going to make money really cheap for the consumer. So if the consumer is borrowing, if they're taking on debts like mortgages, then that money that they're going to use to do that is going to be really cheap. The interest rate's going to be super low. So that flooded the market with buyers. So, very generally, just explaining to a newbie, like the lower the interest rates, the more buyers that are able to purchase houses, and the more people are excited about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned when I first started
Right.
real estate was that interest rates curb the demand of supply and demand.
Yeah.
Essentially. So when we are low on supply, interest rates typically tend to go up, and then our inventory kind of catches up a little bit, and then they start to decrease the interest rate, or interest rate starts to decrease, and then more people have the demand to buy. Essentially, is that
Totally.
is that something that you learned in real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. And, specifically now, like we're talking about the Federal Reserve, and like it's artificial, right? Like we're like curbing supply and demand. It's not based on just how's the market operating uninhibited.
Yeah.
There's like the Federal Reserve controlling. So another thing that I wanted to bring up today is, and I can maybe throw this up, we can maybe throw this up in the video, but if you look at mortgage rates from a historical perspective, like 50 years out, you're seeing the average mortgage around 7%, right? That's the average rate. However,
On a 50-year span.
on a 50-year span, if you look at like and I'm talking about like, the just a normal like 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So the average is hovering around 7%. So,
That's crazy because I think a lot of people
are shocked.
Yeah, because they've experienced that COVID rate, which was
The
like
COVID rate,
2 to 3%,
which is like 2 to 3, but that like in reality is super actually abnormal.
That's historically
low. I mean, it had never been that low.
Yeah,
so.
but people want that, and I can't blame them. I want that myself too, but I don't think there's gonna be another case where we're gonna get that low unless if we have COVID round 2.
Right.
Don't want COVID round 2. Yeah, unless
Yeah.
But
yeah. Very general. I just wanted to explain that a little bit of how like the mechanics of that work. But if you look super low, we're actually in line with how mortgages should.
It's
be,
normalized.
the pricing. Of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another difference that I mentioned previously before was the hot market.
Yeah.
So in today's market, in January 2023's market versus January 2022 market, and maybe a few months after January 2022, one thing that you noticed, or that we noticed, was the amount of offers you would get on a home. Like now and versus back then. For back then, you were probably competing with, in the state of Washington at least, I don't know what it was like in other states or anything like that, but I know that in Seattle, like Bellevue, all those big tech company like cities, the big tech cities, I'm sorry, I think people were probably competing with like 12 to 13 other bidders, and that's how like the price of bidding over 100 to 200K over, I mean, it got that high because you're bidding against that many people.
Yeah, 10 other people. It gets out of hand quick.
Yeah.
Just because you have, 10% chance of getting this. And and I personally, with some of my buyers, I mean, I had a buyer that we, like really strong offers, this guy was a cash buyer.
Yeah.
And we made like 6 offers before we ended up getting a piece of property for him. And so those 6 times
Did it increase every 6 times, or like?
Well, no, on 6 different pieces of property.
Oh, 6 different pieces.
But
okay.
6 times we tried on 6 different pieces of properties to get him that, but there were like 10 other buyers.
Yeah.
So unfortunately we lost, even though like in my heart I feel like we were just so competitive.
From your personal experience, do you think you as the client's agent, or you or them as a client, it was emotionally draining to be beat out like 5-6 times?
Yeah, I think definitely, because if you're like envisioning, okay, this is the house I want to get.
Yeah.
you know,
and then
you're
it kind of
like
like just
thinking,
slips through your
and
fingers.
then it slips through your fingers. You're like, oh no.
Dude,
And then it gets to the point where you're like, all right, we'll bid on this house. Like maybe we get this one. And it kind of like the decision making, like the emotion of it is
that
like,
sucks.
it is draining.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in today's market, you're not competing with a lot of
That's one difference.
Yeah.
You're not like getting your hopes up as a buyer, and like, you know, it's not as competitive. So
yeah, sometimes you're the only offer, which you know, and sellers realize that. So I think a good strategy, even in today's market, is going even under asking price.
Yeah, and
go under, and then they're
Definitely.
probably gonna counter with like a higher price. But you know, you as the buyer have more leverage. I think that's one of the biggest differences in terms of the market today versus last year.
If I could bring up one data point that reminds me of, actually, in Seattle. So one metric that we look at is percent of list price received for a home. So whatever the home is listed for, and then what it sells for. So the percent. So if it sells for the same amount, it's 100%.
Yeah.
Right?
When the market was hot, I was seeing like 102, 110%.
110. But now what's interesting now that I'm seeing is that percent of list price received is 98%, 99%, which you would think, okay, if we're going into this thinking like it's the end of the world, prices are falling, you know, prices are still kind of in line, right? What we are seeing is longer days on market, but at the end of the day, like that's a good indicator, I think, to me, that it's softer, but it's not like a seller can't get an offer on a house.
Yeah.
You know, they're still getting kind of at that value.
Yeah. And I think one thing that a good, so here's a tip for you guys sellers out there. So I think a good agent would
So sorry.
I think no worries. I think what defines a really good listing agent is knowing the market for that house in terms of that area, because that way they can price it competitively. We're told countless times as realtors and as real estate agents that a home will sell within 10 days if it's priced competitively. Yeah. Even in any given market.
And think of it. Within that timeline, within a week on market, every potential buyer that is going to buy your house has seen it already. It's been online. They've seen it online. All the media's out there. The sign's been in the yard. People who drive by. So the vast majority, 99% of people that are potential buyers for your house are probably in the 10-day, in the 7-day, 10-day window.
Yeah. So basically what I want to say, this is for you sellers out there. I understand that you guys want a price that you guys want for your home. It is your home, and it's totally normal to want that price. But to buyers out there, they don't see that value. And what buyers see is what the buyer's agents are telling them. And what the buyer's agents are telling them is, hey, I did a competitive market analysis on this home. This is what the price you should be buying the home for, essentially. And that price, sometimes, typically and statistically, homeowners will always increase the price of their home. And that's understandably fair, because, that has some sentimental value to them.
Right.
But the CMA is not sentimental. I would say just have an understanding that when you do list your home, you do have to kind of go along with the market analysis of that area or that neighborhood. Otherwise, you're going to have a harder time selling your home. So, and here's another tip. When you reduce the price of the home, kind of that almost gives the leverage to the buyers too, in a sense.
Right.
Yeah.
As if the home's been on, there's a psychological effect.
Yeah.
If
it can go both ways.
If it's been on the market a long time.
Yeah. If it's been on the market,
you inherently think,
yeah,
oh, there's something wrong with the house.
Yeah. So actually, scratch that. It's not when
Yeah.
you reduce the price, it's the days on market.
Days on market.
Yeah.
And then that leads to reducing the price.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the number one sign. I mean, even if there's nothing wrong with the house, even if it's just the price.
Yeah.
Even if the price is just a little too high and buyers are like, no, we don't even want to try to make an offer. People are gonna think like there must be something wrong with that house. Which is why it's so important, in that 10-day window that we're talking about.
So typically this is a tip for sellers and buyers. When a house has been on the market for 30 to 35 days, I kind of wait a little bit more longer. I know that can be a little, you're taking a chance there, but a few days after 30 to 35 days isn't much, because if anyone were to have bought it, they would have bought it then. So around 30 to 35 days, that's where I see homes get a price reduction. And then once the price reduction comes, that's where a new flood of buyers come in. And sometimes once you do the price reductions, you never know, buyers will want to go a little lower than that price reduction too. And that, I feel like, is what cuts deep to the sellers and sellers agents as well.
Right. If you're finding an opportunity that's like in that position.
Yeah, definitely. So the differences were in today's market and last year's market was super competitive. Another difference that I want to add to that list is your exit strategies, your use of exit strategies.
Right.
Like,
so by that, do you mean contingencies?
Yeah. And then we went over this the last podcast, but contingencies, do you want to go ahead and reiterate that for our listeners here?
Yes. So contingency, meaning exit strategy.
I mean, in a way, it's
not a strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, like you're not like making a strategy to exit a deal, but a contingency is like an inspection contingency. We went over this last week. If the home doesn't inspect to my standards, then I have a contingency, an ability to walk away from the deal.
Yeah, just think of contingency not rather than a exit strategy, but like protection, insurance.
Protection, an ability to walk away if things don't end up,
how you want
looking
it.
Right in the deal.
Yeah, exactly.
As you go through, as you're in escrow.
Yeah, and typically these contingencies help you as the buyer to keep your earnest money as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, last year in pent-up demand, how do you be more competitive with an offer?
Yeah.
Well, you can be on price. That's one thing, but you can also be competitive on terms. You can eliminate contingencies.
Yeah.
That make you like more locked up for the seller to actually purchase a house.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No. Yeah. Go ahead.
But in today's market, right, it's always advised to have an inspection on the house so that you know the ins and outs of what you're buying. And people, there aren't as many maybe cash buyers.
Yeah.
Because and I allude that to maybe in the higher brackets, the stock market's been hit heavy. So people probably don't have just like as much liquid cash as they usually have in general.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion. I'm just I'm kind of thinking like, man, might be why there's but anyway, you can have a financing contingency, other contingencies. Absolutely.
Yeah, in case of something goes wrong with the house, like maybe there's a clouded title or something's wrong with the house, it provides you a way to essentially not buy that home and not lose your earnest money at the same time. So like let's say you have a financing contingency,
right,
or an inspection contingency. We'll go with an inspection contingency, right? You buy this home, you're trying to put an offer on this home with the inspection contingency, and you realize that through the inspection contingency that there is a cracked foundation, like you mentioned in the previous podcast, or there's something wrong about the home that you didn't realize that first time visiting.
Yeah.
Right? Now, with that being said, you have the inspection contingency in place, and you're able to pretty much say as a buyer, like, hey, because of the inspection contingency, like there's something wrong with the home. Now I don't want to buy it. So I'll go ahead and take my earnest money back. If you didn't sign that inspection contingency, you would have lost all your earnest money. And sometimes earnest money can go up to, I think it's like 5% of the home price.
There's a cap at 5%.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So, well, actually, let's roll it back. Can you explain to me what earnest money is, Sam?
Yeah, earnest money is just pretty much money up front. And it's a way as buyers that you can show the seller how serious of a buyer you are.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, in a sense, skin in the game.
So is that part of your down payment then? Or
Yeah.
how does it work for both the buyer and the seller?
It's not extra money per se. It is more money upfront, and that's what sellers like to see because it's essentially like cash. It's liquid.
Right.
And so that earnest money is actually used towards your down payment as well. It's just kind of showing the liquidity of your down payment in a sense. Like,
Absolutely.
and it shows like if I'm a buyer and you're a seller, and like, hey, briefcase full of money, why
Right.
not take it? You know?
So you sign the purchase and sale agreement. We're good. We just opened escrow. That earnest money gets thrown into escrow.
Yeah.
Which is
I'm planning on giving it to you.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
into escrow, which is the neutral third party that handles all debits and credits for both parties during the transaction.
Yeah.
And then at close, the earnest money is then used towards the buyer side of things.
Yeah.
Whether
So
that be down payment and or closing costs.
yeah, but let's say inspection contingency is in place, and so something wrong with the home. Usually, typically, if you didn't sign that, sellers would be able to take that. But since you have the inspection contingency signed, you're able to take your money back. And that was one of the things that were waived or wasn't applied during that super hot market, you know, because a buyer, I guess, in a sense, like, it's like I said, protection or insurance. It's like what kept the buyer locked into the home of buying that place or buying that home. And in a sense, like, it was more serious. Like, they couldn't back out. Sellers wanted a more guaranteed sale. And if you have an inspection or if you have a contingency in place, then they have to, and buyers apply that, then they have a way of getting out, and then sellers have to relist the property. They have to like remarket the property. Like, when I say sellers, the sellers agents, and that's more time and things like that. And more time on the market means more leverage to buyers. So it just doesn't look good when a buyer backs out. Then that'll show other buyers like, oh, something's wrong with this home.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
But during that hot market, they're like, I don't want no financing contingencies. I don't want no inspection contingencies. You come up with all the earnest money right here, right now. And it was the seller's ball game at that point.
So I'll ask you, Sam, is it a good time to buy right now? If I want to buy a house, is it a good time?
That really depends on every person in their own, like, because everyone has their own lives. They have their own circumstances. I think how you look at it is, you know, it really depends on your own finances, where you're at in life. Okay. So I would say the smart decision is to buy only if it makes sense for you. And the reason why I say that is, yes, interest rates are a little high, but home prices are a lot lower. But as buyers, what is the one thing that you can control? You can't control the price of the home, but you can control your interest rates, right?
Right.
Yeah, by refinance.
Because your pricing is determined pretty much by the competition.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, as the buyer, you can't control the price of homes. The market dictates that. But what you can control as a buyer is your interest rates by refinancing. So in a sense, in today's market, you can essentially get the best of both worlds. Essentially, like, yeah, it's going to sting a little bit with a little higher interest rate, but you get the price of the home that you want. You get you get your dream home at the price that you want, essentially. And you can always refinance, 6 months later? I think that's the earliest that you can refinance a loan.
The earliest, yeah.
Yeah, 6 months. That's determined or depending on if the interest rates are good at the time. And that's what we're aiming for, essentially.
So you're saying, okay, if I buy a house at 6% interest rates, if they go down to 5%, then I can choose to refinance that loan
to 5%
for the better interest rate.
Yeah, and you got the price of the home.
And I got the price of the home. Yeah, right. But I can't go back 2 years later and pay $100,000 less for the house.
Yeah, essentially,
right? I can't get a refund on that.
Yeah, you can't go back to the seller and be like, hey, I overpaid for my home. Can I get like my overbid it back.
So that's the dichotomy there with what you're saying for rate versus price.
It's almost in a sense like delayed gratification in a way. Like whereas take the punch a little bit for that higher interest rate, but like I said, you get the price that you wanted for your dream home, whereas like you're overbidding 100, 150, 200K over, but you got your interest rate, which is great, but you can't, like I said, you can't ask for that kind of, you can't ask for a 200K refund, you know? Yeah. So I would say when you ask, is it a good time to buy? I would say yes, but only if that makes sense for you guys, as you know, like in terms of your own finances and things like that. But I would say those are the things that you should consider in terms of like what you can control as a buyer, which is your interest rates. And then, you know, who knows, you could even get an even lower price on the home too. So yeah, I do want to like transition over to actually on a related topic is the interest rates too. So like you say, like after what I just said, you would, so a normal person would say or ask, like, Sam, yeah, like I understand overpaying, that makes sense, like take the hit for the higher interest rate, but I think what really matters is your due diligence too. Like run the numbers, see if you actually save more money by taking that higher interest rates for like the first 6 months, and seeing if, you know, you pay less than if you were to overbid during a hot market. And if you run the numbers and if that makes sense to you, then yeah, go for it. I think that is where that's what I like to do for my clients, is seeing if it makes sense. You know, seeing if taking the I guess in today's sense or today's market, a 5-6% interest rate is better than overbidding 150, 200K over. You know.
Totally.
Yeah.
I get what you were saying in running the numbers, because real estate is really cyclical. I mean, it's just like the economy is cyclical, and there are ups and there are downs, hills and valleys. But you can make a good deal. You can find a good opportunity whenever. Just because, you know, we're talking about we're in a recession right now or rates are high.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean a good opportunity isn't out there. It means that maybe potentially less people are looking for opportunities because there are less buyers. But essentially, I think run your own numbers and know what you want. Know the results.
Don't run your own numbers. I'll run them for you.
No, absolutely. Running the numbers and make it a good deal.
Yeah.
No matter what time you're buying. I mean, no matter what time, make it a good deal.
Yeah,
that's all.
Definitely. And so like, I guess we could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay.
So like, so let's say we were to run the numbers. So like, let's say for a loan for, let's say $800,000 loan, right? What's the difference between paying with a 5% interest rate, versus a, let's do, okay.
Let me get into the actual affordability.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're talking about is, okay, you know, Bruce and Sam, I understand that I don't want to overpay for the house, but what is this whole interest rate thing? How does it actually translate? What are the results? So I actually, ran some numbers, just did a quick mortgage calculator, and here's the difference. Okay. $500,000 house, but interest rates are 5%. What's the monthly payment on that? It's going to be $2,700 approximately. So now let's raise interest rates 1%. And this is what we call the golden ratio. As interest rates increase 1%, generally you can think of the buyer's purchasing power decreasing by 10%. So $500,000 house is now 6%. What's the monthly payment on that? About $3,000. So for the same house, your monthly payment has gone up $300. Now, let's take it a step further and think of, okay, but what if my maximum payment is actually only $2,700? I can't go up to $3,000.
Yeah.
Well, a $2,700 payment at 6% is a $450,000 house approximately.
Okay.
So with 1% increase in interest rates, we went from 500,000 to 450,000.
Yeah.
Which is a 10% decrease.
Oh, so you're saying 1% of interest rate and change is 10% of the home price of what your buying power is as a buyer.
Buying power. And it doesn't correlate to, okay, interest rates went up 1%. That means home prices are going to crash 10%.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that because
No. You're saying is it entails your buying power as a buyer.
Right.
Yeah.
If the buyer is maxed out at 500,000 at 2,700, they can no longer afford that $500,000 house, essentially.
Gotcha.
So it kicks buyers out of the market.
So that's actually another thing I wanted to mention was, as people of this economy,
yes,
we understand that the interest rates change by the day, right?
Right.
And so in terms of when it changes like that, I think one thing that we all have to understand and keep track of is one day your buying power may allow you to buy this house. Another day, your buying power may decrease and you may not be able to get a loan for that house. I think that's one thing that we should really take into account.
Yeah, and especially now.
Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, meaning you don't want to like be in a deal and then your final verdict comes in for what rate you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it's higher. So now you can't afford the house anymore.
Yes. So
I would say a remedy for that is being below that a little bit. Not maxing out what I can afford. Having a little bit of cushion just for that volatility.
Yeah.
Or another thing that lenders do offer, it's a thing called a rate lock.
Oh, yeah.
And generally, I think, in my opinion, it's pretty spendy. I mean, you could spend probably like $5,000 on a rate lock, but that says, okay, rates are this today.
Yeah.
I'm going to lock in that rate for 90 days and it's going to buffer. So I'm going to have that rate. So that offers some certainty. It's a little bit spendy in my opinion.
Yeah. So let me ask you, in today's market, do you think it makes sense to do a rate lock?
I think if you are concerned that rates are going to go up in the time that it takes you to find the house, close on the house, because the day you write the offer to the day the final loan is approved, that could be 1 week, that could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So they could change. If you think that you might actually get thrown out of being able to afford that house, a rate lock would probably make sense for you if you wanted that peace of mind.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess this topic was, I don't know if it may have been confusing for our listeners or not, but I do want to simplify it a little bit more. So like, I'll give you guys a little like real life example here. So let's say you get approved for a loan for let's say $800,000 home, right?
Yeah.
And then the closing takes some time. Interest rates have changed. They got a little higher. And because of the interest rates have changed and your max loan amount was $800,000, now the nature of your loan has changed and you're now not approved for $800,000 loan. Let's say you're only approved for a $750,000 loan. So now you as the buyer have to come up with $50,000 in difference. You either pay that up front or you don't get the loan at all. Right.
You have to cover that amount because you'll only be loaned a certain amount.
Yeah. Otherwise your deal falls through, your offer falls through, and you're not able to get the home that you want. So I think, like you mentioned before, a good loan officer, I would think, or like a good real estate agent would send you guys homes or submit an application for a home that, where it gives you a little cushion, where if things like that happens, you're still able to get that home that you want. So
right. I would recommend that with a little bit of cushion.
Yeah.
Or the rate lock. Those are two options.
And then another thing is, let's say you're approved for $1 million home, but the home that you want is a $800,000 loan or a home. I'm sorry. Yeah. So you're approved for $1 million home, but the loan that the home that you're looking for at is $800,000. You don't have to use the full $1 million loan. You could, and I would advise that you don't even tell the seller that. You can just tell the seller like, hey, I'm approved for an $800,000 home and I want to buy this home.
So super pro move, just a little thing that I love to do. And with the lenders that I work with, that I, of course it's up to the buyer, whoever their lender is. If they ask for our input, we can give them some suggestions. Hey, this person is really good. But the process I love to do is I love sending that home to the lender. Say, hey, we're about to put an offer on this house. I know that my buyer's approved for $1 million, but the home price that we're going to offer $750,000.
Yeah.
So can you write the pre-approval letter that we're going to submit with the offer?
Yeah, not a pre-qual.
Not a pre-qual.
A pre-approval.
Pre-approval. Can you write that letter to be the exact offer amount that we offer, so that it doesn't show that there's any wiggle room?
Yeah,
basically.
because to a seller, like if I was a seller and I'd be like, oh, they're approved for $1 million home or $1 million loan for $800 loan, why not ask for more? So like I'm not gonna budge on it. It's not like I'm working around this buyer.
Totally,
they can definitely afford it.
You're playing poker, like not showing your hand.
Yeah.
Right?
But now if it's like a 800, like let's say like, oh, we're approved for $800,000 loan and the seller thinks that, then they're like, man, I don't have enough room to like negotiate to go higher. I mean, that's up to them, I guess, but like they can negotiate that, but like you're showing what you need to show as the buyer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like you want to have a lender that's like willing to write that per property pre-approval letter.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest differences for January 2022 and 2023 is definitely this competitive market that we used to have that is not there as much. I think with the competitive market, definitely there was a difference in, how do we want to say this? Your contingencies, your availability to use contingencies and protect yourself as the buyer.
Right.
Another one was overbidding. You're not going to see that as much or pretty much at all. You actually see more price reductions in homes today than overbidding for sure. Yeah. Do you have anything to add in terms of the difference between buying in last year's market compared to today?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, okay, as a buyer, it's always good to be like super prepared and ready to jump on, okay, if I see this house, I'm going to put an offer on it tonight and I'm all ready to go. Everything's in line.
Yeah.
So that was required essentially last year.
Yeah.
It's not as required as much.
Yeah, or you wouldn't even get the whole house because they've already accepted the offer from someone else.
I had, oh my God, so embarrassing. Like I was on a tour with some of my buyers and we're good. We're like home, we're really close. So it wasn't awkward. It wasn't weird. But we get to the house. So, we're in Bellevue. We're like emailing, hey, I think this is a really good house. We should go check it out. We should go check out the house. It just came on the market a few hours ago. So we're like, okay, we're gonna drive over there. So I meet my clients, and I pull up the info on my phone, just on our app that connects to the MLS.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling it up, and they're like, can you read us the description again? We forget. And so I'm pulling it up and I'm looking like, I'm not seeing the house. What's going on? I'm not seeing it. I have a filter for only active homes. And by the time that we traveled to the house to go and view it, we're outside. Dang. Mind you, there's like 10 other people outside, like all like doing the tour.
So yeah, I think I know what is going on.
We get to the house and the home's sold.
Within a few hours?
And that's like the agent didn't even call and say oh, I see you had a tour scheduled. We already accepted an offer.
Dude.
But this was within 5 hours.
Yeah, I
wonder. I was I can't believe what
kind of offer
was crazy.
Given to be accepted within the hour?
No, I was this never happened.
Do you remember the price of the home?
I believe I don't know. It was like 1.3 or something like that.
And this was where? In Bellevue?
It was in Bellevue, yeah.
I wonder.
I forget. I forget like that what it was, the house now, but it was crazy. It was like,
you know, I think the buyer may have offered something where it was obviously over listing price and no contingencies, or maybe I don't know. Maybe maybe not. But
anyway, you're not seeing that.
Yeah.
You have time today.
Yeah.
To drive to the house, check it out.
Yeah.
And then sleep on it. Think.
Yeah.
Do I really like this? Like, should we buy this? You're not like, there's no FOMO. Mm-hmm. Right? You're not just like
FOMO. That's a great word for this.
Yeah.
For this market, honestly.
Right. So
no FOMO in today's market. I think that should be the slogan of this podcast.
Okay. Yeah. And that's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
So that was a little
moment.
But anyway, a little moment there.
Yeah. I'm still like stuck on that story. That buyer.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was
that buyer probably was like, I'm gonna offer you this much, like over listing price with no contingencies, but you need to accept this now.
I know. It got super cutthroat. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, seriously, we just drove to the property. Like, we were looking at it online, and then we drove to the property, and it was gone.
This like you said, this was in Bellevue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Last year.
1.3.
You see those kind of, you hear those kind of stories. So yeah, that I think wraps up Sam today, talking about the differences between
2022 and 2023
and 2023.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm still not used to 2023 yet. Like I
know writing it down. It always takes me like 8 months to like write the correct like year on the date.
Yeah,
I still write 2020. Yeah. I guess.
You still write 2020?
I know,
bro. You're like 3 years behind.
No, I gotta.
that was a new one for me. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, thank you for our listeners for tuning in into the second episode of the Real Estate Modernism Podcast. Number two. If you take a look at our video from the last episode, I said episode 1, but Bruce decided to throw up 2 fingers.
I did. This time we're throwing up 2
so
again.
Funny during the editing process.
Well, anyway, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you go to listen to your podcasts. We're on YouTube to watch the video version of this thing.
Yeah, and you can see Bruce throw up the 2 fingers on the first episode too, if you like. But yeah, give us a like, give us a follow, hit that notification button, and we hope to see you guys in the next episode as well. All right, bye now.